Hey guys, welcome to OTech. I totally didn't steal this case that I'm gonna review today. This is the Aerocool case and I totally know everything about PC.
Okay, get away. This is my video. Hey everyone, this is the actual owner from OTech, and in this video we're gonna review this brand new Aerocool Ore case, which is apparently an FRGB case, which seems to be like an RGB case, but not actually. And also, as you can see here, we're not actually using any RGB fans because they kind of suck, and also we have to destroy the case to take out the fans. And plus many other weird design decisions. So let's get right into it and take a look at this case. And here you can immediately see the large tempered glass side panel, which is really a really good bargain when you consider the price of the case, which is more like $40 to $50. And the glass panel is also slightly tinted, so it's gonna be hard to see inside unless you have some kind of lighting or like white components like these fans I got. Now for the front panel here, you can see it's a full mesh setup and with triple 120mm fan mounts right behind them. Now this mesh setup is also really good for airflow obviously, but it also does not have a dust filter, so keep that in mind that you might get a pretty dusty system really quick. The nice thing is that of course you'll get pretty good temperatures as long as you're using nice fans like the one I'm using right here. Now if we spin around to the back here, you can see the motherboard I/O as well as the PCIe slots down there and the power supply mount as well. Now you get 7 PCIe slots just under the motherboard I/O and as well as a single 120mm fan mount that you can use on the back as exhaust, which I've done so in here using some Corsair fans. On the top of the case, you'll also see the front panel I/O, which has the power button and reset as well as USB ports with both USB 2.0 and 3.0 as well as an SD card reader, as well as a micro SD card reader. This is actually a really cool feature because not even the more expensive cases have these. And honestly, I think more cases should include these, especially for people who actually use their PC for work, like for doing video editing, because you might use lots of SD cards. And here on the top, you can also see there's a single 120mm fan mount, but this thing is not exactly a mount, it's more like a vent with a mesh filter that's attached to it that's magnetic. Now the fan mount itself, if you could call it that, is kind of weird because it doesn't really have holes that perfectly align to a 120mm fan. And if you try to put a 140mm fan on it, it's just gonna hit the motherboard, so it's kind of weird. But I did manage to screw in a 120mm fan by using the vent holes as the screw mount, which kind of works I guess. Now on the bottom of the case, you can see the power supply vent over here on the back, which has those like crappy power supply filter, which I really hate. Yeah, I wish they didn't use that. And on the front of it, you can see some venting right under the hard drive cages as well, which probably won't do much to be honest. But hey, at least the case feet are pretty tall, so you won't choke out your power supply, and especially it's safer for use on a carpet as well with high feet. So let's open up the tempered glass side panel and take a look inside. It uses 4 thumb screws for the side panel. It's just a typical cheap case, a tempered glass mount with just 4 thumb screws that you just screw into the glass directly. There isn't anything fancy, so you gotta be careful to not drop the glass while you unscrew things, otherwise you might chip it or worse, even just break the glass. So that's definitely one of the downsides, but getting a tempered glass side panel to begin with in this price range is really good. Obviously this is a mid-tower case, so you can fit a full ATX motherboard with 7 PCIe slots for expansion with graphics card and other expansion cards. Now with this case, you can't put a larger motherboard than ATX because beside the motherboard there's the cable management holes and the motherboard tray is kind of raised in front of the motherboard section, so you can't exactly put an eATX motherboard for example because it'll just hit with the frame of the case. But in here you can see there's a bit of space left because this motherboard I'm using, the Z97 Gaming 3 from Gigabyte, is a bit shorter than the full spec ATX motherboard size. Now on the inside, let's take a look at the PCIe slots first because as you've seen before on the back, they are actually breakout mounts for the PCIe slots. It's not the typical PCIe slot covers that you can just put back in. They only included one of those on top, but the rest are really just breakout mounts that you have to break off and to use it, so it's not reusable, and that kind of sucks. But then again, this is one of the cheaper cases, so I guess it's acceptable. At least they're not annoying to break out, it's pretty easy. And while we're on the bottom here, there's the power supply shroud, which does have a cutout for the power supply so that you can see the model number, and it also has some vents on top, which can install two 120mm fans with the included screws with the case as well. Well, these fan mounts are to me kind of useless, so I didn't use them because the fans basically just draw in air that's already inside the case, so I don't really see the point. There isn't much venting on the bottom for the bottom fans anyway, so it's pretty useless. I would just use the front fans. And speaking of front fans, here you can see you can mount triple 120mm fans or even a triple 120mm radiator at the front if you want to. But I don't know how I would recommend that because the frame is kind of flimsy, but at least it works for fans. And in this case I'm using the Corsair fans, not the ones that came with the case, which I'll get to later. And these fans fit just fine here, although you can see some of the fans are not fully bolted on with 4 screws, just 2 of them, because of a design flaw in the frame. At least I would like to call it a design flaw, because it seems like some cost-cutting measure. And on the top you can see the 120mm fan mounted there. There isn't enough space to really put a radiator up there. You might hit your motherboard if you have some tall VRM heatsinks. Although on the rear you can definitely use a 120mm radiator if you want to, but I would just use an air cooler because personally I'm an air cooler type of guy. And speaking of the air cooler, there's enough height to fit like a 160mm or less air cooler in here. So here you can see the Scythe Mugen 5 that I'm using fits there nicely. And you can also fit a pretty long graphics card, over 330mm long, which is pretty nice to see as well because there's no drive cage and it's all just empty all the way to the front fans. Although the graphics card is kinda saggy in this case, which I'm using an MSI RX 570 Gaming X, but it's really more of the problem with the graphics card itself. It doesn't have a backplate and it's really heavy, so it's not really the case sagging, it's more like the graphics card sagging, which is kind of stupid, but anyways, it works, so I don't really mind. Now beside the graphics card, you can also see an SSD mount here. You can expose it either on the front side of the case over here, or you could put it on the rear side as well. Either ways, there's a cutout for the cables, so you can route them properly to your motherboard. And for other storage options, you can install another 2.5-inch SSD behind the motherboard, but that's just gonna cut into your cable space even more than you already don't have, so I don't really recommend that, but you can do that if you want to. And on the front here you have a drive bay that you can install 2 3.5-inch hard drives, which is plenty enough for most gaming systems these days, I think. And on the back here you can see the power supply area. There's not a lot of space to be honest, so don't go putting too long of a power supply because you might not be able to fit it, especially with the cables because the drive cage is in the way. And you can see here there isn't much space behind the motherboard tray as well for cable management, so you kind of have to push down the side panel here to really squish down the cables and close it. Okay, now that's just basically what the features of the case are, but here's some of the flaws that this case has. Like for the 8-pin power connector, you can see here you have to route it through the back obviously to have it neat, but it kind of just terminates to a hole behind the motherboard, so that's kind of annoying. You have to kind of route the cable before you put in the motherboard, and then the cable goes behind the motherboard kind of and goes to your 8-pin power connector, so it's kind of a stupid place to put the 8-pin cutout. But at least you have some decent cable routing options with the holes on beside the motherboard as well as under it for the front panel I/O, which is pretty useful. But you don't get one of those GPU power connector holes on the power supply shot, so you kind of have to route it to the back of the motherboard tray. Now for the other bigger flaw of this case, you can see the front fan mounts here is kind of weird and it's kind of crappy. But the biggest problem is that the front fan mounts, you can't actually unscrew the fan on the bottommost slot. Because you see here, there's some screws right behind the hard drive tray and you can't remove that, it's riveted in. So like, I don't understand how the heck do you... Like, I don't understand how the hell did they even put a fan there and screw it on from the back, because it was really difficult to take it out. I had to literally bend the frame and just bust the screw out of the frame to get the fan out, the original fans, which by the way were some crappy fans. I mean, these are marketed as FRGB, which might fool people to think they are RGB'd and controllable, but no, these are actually just fans with colorful rainbow rings on them. And the biggest problem is that these fans are way too slow. So as I'll demonstrate here by putting the fans back on, and you guys will see the struggle I tried to deal with to put in the fans. But yeah, basically the fans run only at like 1000 RPM and they're powered by Molex, and the fans barely blow any air. And the RGB, I guess it looks nice, like it's fake RGB, it's just a rainbow ring. So it's a really budget way to do RGB. you can't actually adjust the lighting at all. It's just fixed like that, and you can't orientate the fans the wrong way or otherwise it'll look weird. But as you can see here, the fans, as I powered them up from 12 volts straight from a power supply, it doesn't even blow that much air. I mean, it does look nice, but it does not blow any air. Like, I could literally blow the piece of tissue way harder than the fan can. So the temperatures were really horrible with the stock fans. It literally crashed the PC because my CPU I'm using here is a Core i7-4790K that I overclocked to 4.8 GHz with DLIT and everything. So it's kind of like on the verge of stability, and it got way too hot, like close to like 90 degrees even with this cooler and with some slower rear exhaust fans. But yeah, it got way too hot, so I just had to replace them with these Corsair fans that I had, which blows a lot more air. And even though they're not the best fans, still, as you can see, it's not super strong, but it's better than the stock fans, which basically blow zero air right behind that mesh front panel, which makes the mesh kind of useless if you think about it, because what's the point of a mesh if you can't blow air through it with some decent fans? And the problem is that it doesn't even look like the fans are cheap to make, because those LED rings look like they cost some money. So I don't understand why they didn't just go with like putting a 3-pin fan that you can connect to the motherboard, that you can control the fan speed that's faster than just 1000 RPM, which is way too slow for case fans. Like, I can't use that at all. So effectively, this case is a pretty nice case that has good cable routing holes, but not enough space on the back. But you can still make it look neat, and it also looks pretty nice with the tempered glass side panel, which makes it feel a bit higher quality than those acrylic case ones. And also you get some triple 120mm fans at the fronts, which are, you know, fake RGB. It looks really nice, I must admit that, but they are basically useless, so I don't see the point. That's the biggest problem with this case. Other than that, the case quality is decent. It's pretty sturdy. You don't really bend the metal too much because it's not too thin, unlike some of the cheaper cases. So again, it's a decent quality case that's let down by the biggest feature of the case, which are the front fans, which are basically useless in my opinion, unless you're using some really low power system. So yeah, I would not use the front fans.
So in a nutshell, it's a case. It works. You don't expect it to do anything else, right?
Yes, it works. It does work. It's a decent case, in fact, especially for the price, because in this price range, look at this. You get a tempered glass side panel, which is way better than the acrylic ones you get with the cheapo cases. But it's just that the front fans are kind of garbage, which makes the mesh front panel kind of useless if you're using the stock fans. Because honestly, you could probably blow into the case and cool the PC better than those stock fans. But other than that, this is a decent case, at least the case itself. Like, you get good airflow, good looks, and yeah, good price. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this review of this Aerocool Ore case. And if you do enjoy this video, maybe leave a like and maybe click subscribe to see more of my future videos such as reviews, unboxings, and also buying guides as well. Yeah, thanks for watching.